Hey there, welcome back. This is Chand from studyeasy.org, and in this particular video, we will try to understand how we can retrieve information from the database. In our last video, we have successfully added a row in the database, which was fantastic. And in this particular video, we will proceed further. Now, in order to retrieve information from the database, we need to also update our entity class, and which would be our first step. In our last video, we have added the user in the database, and in which we have updated the entity class a little. Let me show you the entity class as well. So in here, this is the entity class where we have a constructor based on username, password, first name and last name. Note that we also have a yet another column by the name of username. So there is a catch in here. We need to also add a constructor in here. So that is something which we will do in couple of minutes. Apart from that, the user ID is nothing but the primary key in our table. Let me show you the workbench as well. So in here, this user ID is the primary key. Let me show you the structure as well. Alright, so user ID is the primary key. PK stands for primary key, whereas it is also not null entity. So the primary key cannot be null, obviously. And finally, it is a auto increment value as well. So we need not to worry about the user ID value. The value would be auto incremented by itself. So these are the properties of user ID. So remember this. The bottom line is the user ID is our primary key. So whenever we would be retrieving some information from the database, it would be based on this primary key whose name is user ID. So that is something which we need to remember. Apart from that, we would be also adding a toString method in here. Let me also do that. I will right click, navigate to source, and we will generate the toString method in here. Now why I am adding a toString method? In order to reduce our workload, and this toString method will enable us to directly print an object of user type, and we would be able to, for example, check what exactly is the data which is received from the database. So that is something which is done for our convenience. All right. Apart from that, we need to add a yet another constructor, which would be the default constructor. Now, why we would be adding the default constructor and where it would be used, this is something which we will discuss in couple of minutes. So I will right click, navigate to source, and we will select the option generate constructor using fields, and we will deselect all of these fields checkbox, and we will click on OK, and we will also get rid of this call to super method. Alright, so this looks cool, and we also have this default constructor as well. Alright, so now finally we will proceed further, and we will update this app.java class, and we will finally try to retrieve information from the database, and that would be pretty simple as well. So let me show you how. Alright, so now let us update this particular try block. So first of all, let us get rid of this line of code where we are performing operation. The operation would be differ, and now we need to also update this line of code. We simply want object of user type, and this is the reason why we have also added the default constructor. So we will simply type in user new users, and we will get rid of all of the stuff in between. We simply want a object with no values inside the object. And then finally, the operation part will differ, and the operation is pretty simple. We will simply say user equals session dot get, and then we will pass in the type. The type is users dot class. Alright, and then finally we need to also pass in the value of the primary key. In our case, the value of the primary key would be 8. Now what is this 8? 8 is nothing but the primary key or the user ID for username Chand, right? So this is good. Let me minimize this once again, and then we would be finally committing the session. And in place of the system.out.println, we will simply display the value which we have received. So we will simply print user, and in order to display the value in a readable format, we have already added toString method into our entity class so that the output from the system.out.println is readable. So now finally we will right click and run this application, and let's see whether this gets executed or not. And this is executing perfectly. User ID is 8, username is Chand, password is 123456, first name is Chand, last name is Sheikh, and Hibernate is also showing us the query which it has generated. So everything is cool, and I suppose I have made myself clear how to, for example, retrieve information from the database, which is fairly straightforward, and this is so simple. And I suppose I have made myself clear. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day and take care.